Hello, all of my imaginary friends. I thought that we would read a story together. This one is in honor of our independence, the founding fathers. This is the cover. I really like this book. I hope you will like it as well. It says there, these horse riding, fiddle playing, book reading, gum toting gentlemen who started America by Jonah Winter. And the illustrator is Barry Blitt. I have slides this time. So we're going to show all the pages together. And the next page, it shows if it will go. Hello, turn the page. Oh, 14 of the most famous fathers. And you have a varsity squad that has Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, Adams, Madison, Jay, Hamilton. That's your varsity squad. Go team. And then we have our junior varsity. Adams, Hancock, Henry, Morris, Marshall. What does that one say? Resh, Payne, a cat, Earth, I'm not sure what his name is. Actually, I can't see it either because Ruth. Ruth, I believe it is. And Payne. There they are. The junior varsity team. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's go to our first page. This is the picture. And you can see somebody having a little bit of a temper tantrum down there on the floor, and someone's real sweaty. This is the preamble. This is part 1. The founding fathers. Americans always talk about founding fathers as if they were a group of dads who, after a brief huddle, just hauled off and founded America. And Americans are always arguing about them. They were religious, says one person. They weren't that religious, says another. They were good guys, says someone else. They were bad guys, says another. If the founding fathers could hear us now, what would they think? Maybe they'd shake their heads at how badly we misunderstand them. Maybe they'd think it was hilarious that we grouped them all together under one name, the Founding Fathers. Sounds like a rock band or a baseball team. George Washington at first, Thomas Jefferson on the mound, Ben Franklin as skipper. What a lineup. In truth, the men we now call the Founding Fathers were a bunch of guys with stomach issues and wooden legs and problematic personalities who sometimes couldn't even stand to be in the same room with each other. In truth, these men were not saints. They were imperfect. Sometimes they made no sense. Most claimed to be opposed to slavery, and yet many of them owned slaves. They claimed in their Declaration of Independence that, quote, all men are created equal, and yet in their Constitution, they made no such claim. The Constitution was the original rule book for how the game called America would be played. And this Constitution, as they wrote it, made no mention of slavery or voting rights. They left these important issues up to each state to decide for themselves. To decide for itself. And at that time, in a majority of the states, mostly only white men with money were allowed to vote. In a majority of the states, slavery was perfectly legal. So much for all people being equal. In creating a bold new country, the founding fathers had also created a lot of problems for future generations to solve. Yippee! But and this is a big but, the men we now call our founding fathers were some of the most tremendously smart people who ever lived. Just the sort of people you might want to invent a new country from scratch without an instructional manual. And like many tremendously smart people, they were often arrogant and stubborn. They argued constantly. Some of them wanted a constitution, others were against it. Some of them wanted one big central government to govern all the states, and others wanted the states to govern themselves. Some of them thought France was a really cool country, and some of them hated France. And some of them just wanted to eat their dinners in peace without thinking about France at all. Basically, the founding fathers' opinions were all over the map. They were not like most of America's modern day politicians who fall into either the Democrat or Republican camp on every single issue. When George Washington was elected as America's first president in 1789, there was no political parties. It was a different country back then with different problems, and the foundings and the fathers tended to think for themselves. The United States that these fathers founded was not terribly united and definitely not perfect. It was an imperfect nation that reflected all the arguments they'd had in creating it and the compromises they had to make. Luckily for Americans, it was also a nation where imperfections could be fixed, even if it took 77 years or more to fix them. What these founding fathers fathers founded was a work in progress and the model for most modern governments. What they founded was a foundation on which to build America, which would later become the most powerful country in the world. It must have been a pretty solid foundation. And here are some of the men who built it. And that is our first chapter. Come back and we'll read about George Washington next time. Bye-bye.